welcome back to Tool Time. I'm Robbie the Toolman Taylor, and with me is always my handy assistant, Whitey Borland. And today we got a very special guest, Uncle Knowledge, the man himself, Stevie.
Hello. Hello, everybody. How's it going?
He's an amazing circuits guy. Whenever I have a question or a little challenge or something, I usually go to him. So check him out. He's part of Makers Collective. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit.
Yep. So as Robbie said, I am part of the Makers Collective. I am one of the circuiteers on the team. We're normally a small group. We just recently started accepting applications. So this coming year, we're hoping to hit this year hard. So if you haven't heard of us already, you should by the end of the year. That's the goal.
And for the ones that
Yeah.
know Dave or myself, he was the one that worked with us, obviously, on Tang Yuan Racing. So you've seen his work for sure. But today, one of the questions we had in the comments, actually, of a different video was how to do CV1 to CV2 conversions or CV2 to CV1 conversions. Anyway, along those lines. And so I brought him here to try to explain to us. But first, do you have any news you want to share, Dave?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, cool. We're good. So I'm just gonna get up there and go like quickly through like the simplest thing that most people do, and I'll then we'll get to the actual Stevie explanation of the thing. Yeah. All right. So here I pre-built this little thing, which is like basically the most basic thing that most people do is trying to trigger animations which are only CV1 in the game with CV2, because most of you will probably be working by now only on CV2 or mostly on CV2. And so to trigger an animation, a certain part of when something happens, when someone enters, you're going to have to do a conversion. So here we have simplest conversion. You guys already know how to make a toggle button from a single button with a bool and a nut. And so this one is going to move a piston, and it's going to move it, I think, 20 centimeters up or something like that. So it's just going to move this cube that is attached to the piston, and this cube's got a tag. And so this CV1 trigger volume is looking for that tag. Remember that actually if you do something like this, simple like this, because that's all you need, you can change this cube into a CV2 trigger volume or other kind of volume to actually use less ink, because then you don't have like a single cube floating around your room. But once the cube goes in, it's just going to turn on this light instead of turning on an animation. All right, so now boom, hit the button, light turns on, hit the button, light turns off. That's it. We're triggering a CV1 light with a CV2 button by method of simple conversion. This is the basic. So now let's go down there and we'll check out a much more complex and much more fleshed out version of this. All right, so this is a way better version of doing it. And I do know by means of talking to Stevie for a while that the rangefinder is the way to go. And let me just start by saying, like, the way I understood it the time we were talking about it was that, so you have a rangefinder, right, that is pointing basically like a laser, and you can have like a thing that moves between different distances. So you can have your circuit check for distances. So let's say if the thing is at 1, do this. If the thing is at 5, do this. If it's at 3, do that. And if it's at 20, do that. And since you're moving things by positions, they're very, very specific, and you give yourself a range, of like a centimeter or something, you can have like a lot of things triggering from the same rangefinder. And that's as far as I get. So let's see. Dave's also here to ask questions and enlighten us on knowledge.
Well, your explanation was pretty close. It's not that far off from that. That's pretty much what this little rangefinder down here does. But I'll go over the circuitry so that you can see it run live. I don't think you'll actually see it execute, but if you pay attention to this small little guy here, you'll see him move just a little bit, and a sound will play.
Team scores.
All right, so all that's really doing is just setting this position of this little guy here up a little higher, just enough so that the rangefinder can detect that distance and send an event outwards or send a number out. Right now, all we have is this one sound effects chip, but if you wanted to have more outputs than just a one, you would use a comparator chip. Comparator chip combined with a selector chip, and these two in conjunction will allow you to use a full range of outputs outside of just one. I don't know if Robbie has gone over with you guys how this selector chip works. Most likely not. Legacy circuits is something that most people typically don't already know. If they don't know it, you don't know it, and you don't learn it. So that's most people's knowledge, which is unfortunate because it's a rather simple system. It's not hard to get your head around. It just takes a second to recognize that everything is just a number again. But to get more outputs out this guy, you want to wire the output from the distance, that red pin, to the selector on the wow, I forgot the chip. On the selector chip, excuse me. To get outputs on these pins here, you want to configure this chip to specify what numbers you're looking for. There are different options in this selector chip for being first and I believe match are the two options that we have. Actually, yes, first and all. So what first mode and all mode does is first mode will whatever matches first. If any of those inputs matches whatever the selector is, then it'll output the first match it gets. So if you have two inputs looking for let's say a value of 2, and only the first 2 will actually output anything. All does both inputs. So no matter how many of them are configured to do, you'll get an output on all of those pins. All right, and that's a very brief rundown of the selector chip. That's how you get your different numbers to activate different things. You can use this to activate not just animations, but everything else CV1 has to offer, whether that be pistons, rangefinders, respawns,
Sounds.
whatever you need.
All right. That's pretty cool. So how are you moving the ball? Like, what's telling the ball to go, like, which distance?
This ball specifically, that
Yeah,
is where
or
we leave the realm of legacy and come into
of
the updated
legacy
world of
and come
circuits.
into the future.
And I use an event. What I like to do is create my own custom events for anything that I use more than once. So something like this is something that really easy excuse to make an event for. So to move that button, what I like to do is set the position of the sphere itself to whatever the current position of the rangefinder is, plus a small value. It does matter what direction this guy is facing. So if he was facing downward, we obviously wouldn't be adding to this position. We would be subtracting. I would suggest you just stick to going up and down. Those are the two easiest ways to go, and just so that way you only have to add to a single variable. But if you have to position your rangefinder in a horizontal manner, you'll have to deal with the math that you've set yourself down. So try to keep it up and down for simplicity's sake, and you'll be able to get through this no problemo. You'll be able to find this little guy and get that out all the time.
Right.
So after we
'Cause
set
when
the
you just put it in
position,
a room, you don't know if it's going to be an X or Z, right? It's pointing a different
correct,
way. So it might not work. But
right,
Y is always Y. Up is always up, and down is
correct.
always down. All right, that's cool.
Yes, at least on Earth. Once we leave this atmosphere, up is up and down is up. Right after we set the position of the sphere, we run a small delay. This delay is roughly the amount of time that CV1 takes to operate. CV1 and CV2 operate at different speeds. CV2 operates at your the speed your game is running, and CV1 is at 10 hertz, so it's at a fraction of what CV2 can do. So this delay just sort of accounts for that, so that the ball is in free space or for a long enough time. After that time, we reset the object back to the top of the rangefinder to start over again. And that's how I send the signal from CV2 to CV1. That's my most powerful and my most common way of doing a converter. However, most people don't really like to use that. An alternative method is this second way that we have here in front of me using this toggle button. This one will convert a signal both back and forth, and I've already set it up to transmit a signal both ways. So this toggle button here will let you send a signal, a CV1 signal to a CV2 signal.
Nice.
And if you wanted to do a CV2 signal to a CV1, you would simply do. I have set it up to just add the tag like this, but same thing, same setup. You can use this to send a signal back and forth for whatever purpose you do have. So yeah, if you wasn't aware of this is another one. This is using more legacy circuits than CV2, but the CV2 side really is just checking for the trigger volume that itself, the CV2 trigger volume, and toggling a specific tag on that trigger volume. This first one is looking for that tag. Adversely, the CV2 trigger volume is looking for the trigger volume on the first one. So they're looking for each other specifically. So whenever one leaves and one enters, it's doing something depending on which one is leaving and entering. So yeah, those are the two conversion methods that I know. Yeah. Are there any questions? Do you guys have anything for me?
No, I actually really like the rangefinder now. I think I understand it way better than I did before. Because basically adding more positions to this would mean different things, right? Like, so maybe I could, like I don't need, like I could make the event you have the value already on the event. The event's coming with a value, right? So I could have a sender, like we saw in other things. You can have like a sender that will send a value to this event, and then that way you can tell the ball to go to like, 30 centimeters away from the rangefinder to do a very specific thing that is already set up over here, right? So it just needs to know what to trigger and when. And one thing about this is that, like, again, if you know about like ink saving and management and all that stuff, you don't want to have like single things that aren't merged with other things, because like one cube on its own is going to be a lot of ink. It could be like, you can get to, I think, 100. These 100 cubes in one cluster. Whoops, I don't know what I just clicked. And so having one single item is going to be like very costly in terms of ink. But if you can use senders to have this thing convert all of your CV2 to CV1 thing to trigger animation slides, stage slides. That's another thing. Recently I worked in a little like concert space. I helped a little bit with circuits, and they needed to use like stage slides for stuff that are also only CV1. So using this thing it's costly because you have like the one single bulb, but in the grand scheme of things, it's probably the best way. Yeah, I really like it, and thanks for explaining, because that's very useful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if that's everything for now, guys, please leave your comments or your questions down there, or join our Discord. And Steve is also there, so you can bug him with questions if you guys have some further some further clarifications needed. And we'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.
Bye.